Hey, plant-powered friends. Welcome to Thrive on Plants. I'm Dr. Daphne Bascom. And today I'm thrilled to sit down with a woman who proves that embracing carbs can change the game at any age. Valerie, or Coach Val Swanson, is the founder of Running on Carbs. She's a RRCA and UESCA certified run coach, a national certified personal trainer, and by day, the broker of record for a major luxury real estate firm in Southern California. Now, Valerie didn't lace up seriously until midlife, yet now she's guiding masters athletes around the globe with her 5-pillar framework: fun, build gradually, strengthen durability, holistic nutrition, and persistent mindset. In today's conversation, you'll hear how a single line in the documentary What to Health made her trade tilapia for tofu overnight, and how this change helped her slash her cholesterol in the process. We'll unpack her late start running journey, her plant-based fueling strategies, and the hard-won lessons that she learned from a femoral neck stress fracture that sidelined her for 9 long months. If you're a busy midlife woman or no one who wants to run strong without sacrificing hormones or health, stick around. I think you'll enjoy some of the pearls of wisdom that Coach Val has to share with us today. Valerie, thank you so much and welcome to Thrive on Plants.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's been a long time coming, so thank you for your patience. But I know our community is going to love having this conversation with you today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here, and it was worth the wait.
Well, thank you. I know some of the Thrive on Plants community may be familiar with you, but could you start by sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why running is so important in your life?
Gosh, there's so much in there, right? It's a big question. Who are you?
Who are you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When I give my intro to my own podcast, it's that I'm a wife, empty nester, mother, executive professional, and run coach. And all of those things make up who I am. It involves all of my loves, my passions, my work side, and my hobbies. So, in a nutshell, that is who I am. Um, I have come to running though later in life. So, as a run coach, I bring a different perspective, I think, than some run coaches. And that is that I like to work with women who are similar to me in that they maybe are running later in life. Maybe they didn't think that they could run, and now they are, something sparked in them, and they think, well, if so and so is doing it or she's doing it, then why couldn't I? And I like to take that spark and expand on it and help them achieve goals that maybe they never thought that they were even capable of. And that is the most rewarding thing to me.
And you're young, so later in life is relative, but when you so what prompted you to start running, and were you plant-based when you started running?
I was plant-based. My running journey is kind of long in that I tried running earlier, like in my 20s, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I would never have thought about a coach at that point in my life. Um, but I wanted to be a runner. I always wanted to be. But when I would try to run, I would exhaust myself and I couldn't run a mile. And I would do other exercises and things. I was always very active and mostly like the at home fitness. I had every like DVD imaginable.
Yeah.
um, I did, grow up in the 90s. so, um, so anyway, I would exercise regularly. But I didn't pick up running until, gosh, in my 40s, and that was after I was plant-based.
Mhm.
So anyway, when I started running when I was in my 40s, and I was already plant-based, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts and learning a lot, and found out that a lot of runners, or a lot of plant-based individuals would run. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll try this again. I still want to be a runner. And so I picked it up again and realized I did a lot better. And I started learning more about how to do it properly.
Uh-huh.
And slowly, I picked up and I was able to do 3 miles. The first time I got my treadmill, I did 3 miles and I shocked myself and said, maybe there's something to this. I think maybe I might be able to do this now. And I was scrolling on Facebook one day, and a advertisement for the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon came up on my feed. And I thought, I've only ever run 6 miles like at a time. I wonder if I could do a half marathon. And I reached out to my sister and said, what do you think? Do you think I should do this? And she said, well, yes. That's pretty much all the encouragement I need from my sister. So I signed up and started training. And then from there forward, I got serious about it. And then I was hooked.
But I mean, so that's 20 years that you were involved in your professional life, you were a mom, you were a wife. Had you always maintained some level of fitness, or was it just that there was always something in you that wanted to run, and it was just the time in your life when you said, "Let's give this a try again"?
I would go to the gym. So yes, I was always very active. I always would exercise. Like I said, I had every DVD known to man. I was not much of a gym goer, but I
Got it.
would join a gym here and there. And mostly I would join the gym to run on the treadmill. And I would So I wouldn't do anything else. I would just go to the gym and I'd get on the treadmill, and I usually do a run walk, which is a great way to start. I
Mhm.
didn't know that that was a good way to start at that time. But it's a great way to start as a runner, is to do, short intervals of run walk, run intervals. And so that is how I would work out. And I would go to the gym, and that would be it. And then I'd, get off the treadmill after an hour and go home.
So you weren't doing strength training or any type of plyometrics or nothing? Yeah.
Not at that time. Yes, those things came later. I am, however, a P90X fan, and there is definitely plyometrics in your P90X. Mr. Tony Horton. I mean, he's a
I love P90.
yes, I love it too. P90X2 though is my absolute favorite, because it really incorporates a lot of the stability work that was kind of new at that time when he introduced it, and now you see it so much. Single leg work, plyo single leg. So
Because running really is single-legged activity. Yeah.
yes, yes. So now I incorporate a lot more of that.
In Valerie, do you mind my asking when did you become plant-based? And what is there a why behind that?
There is. Yes. So hereditarily, I have elevated or high cholesterol.
Mhm.
And so I had been kind of struggling with it off and on throughout the years. And my doctor at one point, bless her heart at that time, she handed me a little note and said, well, if you don't want to go on statins, because it was elevated, it wasn't really, really high, but it was over the 200 mark that they were, that is statistically what the medical field looks at.
Mhm.
So she wrote down a couple of names of books and gave them to me. And I came home and I got on the computer and I looked up these books, and I started reading about plant based. And like, what the heck? I'm like, she wants me to be a vegetarian? What? I just turned it off. I just turned it off. I was not ready to hear that.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's very important. So you have to be ready to hear the message. And I ignored it for a couple of years. And
Oh,
but I
interesting.
did I cut out all of the red meat. I pretty much only had fish and dairy
Okay.
for several years. And I thought I was doing good, but my numbers continued to be elevated. And one day, it was soon after my birthday, and I was around 40, I think. It was 2017. And it was a few days after my birthday. I was watching TV and watching the documentary What the Health.
Hmm.
And on What the Health, in one portion, the narrator says that there's as much cholesterol in tilapia as there is in a pork chop. And I went, "What?" And I've been eating tilapia. That has been my staple food.
Got it.
I went to the freezer, I pulled it out, I looked at the label, which I never used to do, and went, "Oh my gosh, I've been sitting here, beating my thumb with the hammer over and over again, not even realizing it." So from that day forward, I cut it out, and I kept cheese in my diet because that's a whole other story, right? Cheese is tough. It's a tough one. But I got to the point after only a couple of weeks that it was too hard to try to be in both worlds, that I just cut it out altogether. And I had a bunch of cheese left over, like Parmesan or something in my refrigerator, and I just threw it all out and said, "You know what? If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it." And from that day forward, I've been plant-based.
Wow. And did you bring your whole household with you?
I brought my son with me for a while,
Okay.
and he was younger though, but he was an athlete. He was a water polo player.
Hmm.
And I knew the health benefits for him. And he did stay vegan and plant-based for about a year. I do find that without that strong why, especially when you're at that age, that high school age, it's difficult to maintain, with all of the peer pressure and everything around you, going to meets and things out of town. They were a traveling team,
Yeah.
and he tried, and he was pretty good, and he would make good choices sometimes, but eventually he kind of fell off of that. But he's
Awesome.
still very open-minded, so, he has no problem, whenever like in my house, I don't cook anything that's not vegan,
Mhm.
um, and so if I'm gonna make food, it's gonna be vegan.
Yeah.
Mhm. But we are a blended household. Mhm.
That's and I'm glad you shared that because there are a lot of women listening who are in the same position.
Mhm.
They may be in a blended household, they may be in a blended family, but
Mhm.
it's important to know that you can still navigate your health journey and be plant-based while
Mhm.
serving those around you.
Absolutely. I think that there's room for both, and everybody, like I said before, you have to be prepared and ready for your own journey.
Yes.
And mine came to me when it did, and the rest of my family, their moment may or may not come for them, but they will, make their own choices for
Mhm.
themselves. They're all adults. I'm in a house of adults.
100% agree.
Mhm.
And do you mind my asking your health markers, did those improve?
They've improved, but I do still struggle with the cholesterol.
Mhm.
It's still a challenge. Like, it's come down for a few years,
Mhm.
and they were doing really well. But cholesterol is kind of a funny thing because it's not only the food, but it's also activity and other things.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, it's it's not a linear process, but has definitely come down. And I definitely wonder sometimes, like, okay, if I wasn't doing this, what would it be? My goodness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But all of the other health markers are good. And cardiovascularly and all of that, with between running and plant-based. The combination, I scared my doctor, or the nurse, at my last checkup. I just went last week,
Uh-huh.
and she took my blood pressure, and my blood pressure is always pretty low, but she took my blood pressure, and I think it was like 110/46.
Awesome.
And she said, "Oh," and it kept beeping at her. And she said, "Oh, well, when it's below a certain number, was in the 40s, I have to take it again." So she took it again, and it was, right around the same thing. So she's like, "Oh, well, okay." But my doctor was fine with it. She's aware.
We're not used to seeing healthy people.
Yeah. No, my visit was really quick. She said, "Okay, do you want blood work? All right, here's what we're gonna do." I said, "Perfect, great, thanks." I think I was in and out in like 15 minutes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go back to you were going from 6 miles to 13.2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
13.1.
13.1, that's right.
6.2. 13.1, yes.
How did your half marathon go and how did that set off the rest of your journey?
It went really well. I trained well. Boy, you put a training plan in front of me and I am going to follow it to the T. So, I'm I just I'm one of those
Love it.
typical runners, right? The type A kind of thing.
Love it.
So, so yes, I followed my training plan to a T, and I hit my time mark that I was hoping for,
Okay.
and and it was great. I had to walk a couple times, like on little hills that I wasn't prepared for. But being a first, I mean, I think that's fine in any race. You have to do your own race. Um, but I think that's a new runner mentality. Oh, I don't want to walk. So I had that mentality as a new runner, um, and our new endurance runner, I guess you could say at that point. And and so I was very happy with the race. And then it was funny again. My sister was at that race with me, and she said, "So, do you think you'll do another one?" I said, "I don't know. That might be my last one." Famous last words. Famous.
You got home and signed up for the next one.
Yeah, within a week or two, I was already signed up for the next race, and my second race was a half marathon trail race
Oh,
in
fun.
San Francisco. Yeah, through the Marin Headlands. It was a beautiful race, and that one I did lots of walking, and I knew I would, but it was just gorgeous. That's why I had to take a lot of pictures.
And part of the running journey should be to enjoy it. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I think they're running dab water right now, and you wonder if they can be enjoying it while they're running through the desert. But for trail runners, for road runners, you have to enjoy it because that's partly what keeps you going back out there again and again.
Mhm. Yes, definitely. I It's one of those things when it gets taken away from you, you
Mhm.
recognize even more so how much it means to you.
And at what point, and I don't know what the time frame was, but when did you decide I want to coach people and I want to share your passion with other people?
Mhm. That came about interestingly. It I studied for that. Gosh, my years always blend in my head. Um, I think it was right before I had my injury. I had gotten my certification.
Mhm,
And mainly when I first got my certification, I thought it would be just for me. I
mhm,
wanted to know more. I'm a big proponent of education in general, and learning is just part of who I am. And I know that whenever I do anything, I always want to get the highest level of knowledge and education as I can in that field. And so running, I felt like the same thing. I needed more education, more understanding of the ins and outs. And so I did it for myself, and then realized I have a message to share from my perspective. Because it's interesting, social media can take you in different directions. Either it can be good or bad, and it all depends on how you use it. But I was noticing on social media in a lot of the running groups how much misinformation there was out there, and information that I could see would hurt people if they
mhm,
followed it. And I realize there is a place for the correct information to help people avoid being injured, or to have a better experience, or to not give up. And so I wanted to use my knowledge to help those individuals so that they can continue on the journey uh, of running and find the benefits and the love of it that I know is there, but they just were a little like me in the beginning. They just didn't have the knowledge. So they were just a little off track. So I want to use my knowledge to help people stay on track so that they can do something that they probably really love. They
mhm.
just need a little help.
So I'd love to, if you're willing to share a little bit about, you mentioned that you were injured.
Mhm.
Um, what type of injury did you suffer? And was it a running based injury or do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's, you know, it was a severe injury in that it took a long time, so, to heal from. I had ran my first marathon, uh, in 2023, early
Mhm.
in the year, in month or February, and all through my training, I had had tightness in my hamstrings, especially on the right, very tight, especially like after a run. But while I was running, it would go away. And then after, it would all tighten up and it would be tight when I would sit and stuff. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get through the marathon and then I'll go to physical therapy and figure out what's wrong. Hmm. Runner
Yep.
mentality. This is
No,
runner.
you're
This
like
is
all the
runner
rest of
thing.
us.
So I did. I got through the marathon. And I soon after went to physical therapy, went and said, okay, my hamstring's bothering me. What can we do? And he thought it was my low back,
Uh-huh.
stemming from the low back. So we all treated my low back. And it, I went through the whole physical therapy thing and it wasn't really fixing it. It, like, helped a bit, but it didn't really fix it. And so sent me on to a physical medicine doctor.
Mhm.
Even though I'm not real big on the medications, I decided to go ahead and just keep the appointment and see what she said. In the meantime, I was now training for my second marathon, and I was about 5 weeks into training for that marathon, still with this pain, right? Still kind of working through it, not stopping me, but not feeling great.
Right.
And the 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 couple days before my appointment with her, I was supposed to be doing a long run. I was going to do a 14-mile run that day, and I could not get through 5 miles. I kept stopping,
Oh.
stretching. It was my hip, my right hip. This time it
Mhm.
was in the front. It wasn't my hamstring. It was in the front.
Mhm.
And I hobbled home. And when I walked in the door, I basically that day I couldn't put any pressure on it. Holding onto
Mm.
walls,
Okay.
holding onto furniture, trying to get through the house. But within a couple days, it kind of let up and I was able to walk again. And I thought, oh, it must just be a muscle thing. And to cut the story way shorter than it really was, I went to the physical medicine doctor. She had me do a hop test. I failed it. She took an x ray, didn't show anything, and said to just rest, basically, rest it for a while. Um, that was in July. And then my pain continued on.
Hmm.
And I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff trying to fix the pain in my hip, stretching and all sorts of things, yoga. And in September, I finally had an MRI and it diagnosed a femoral neck stress fracture.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
oh my gosh, then all of a sudden, all the, fire alarms went off and the doctor's calling me, stay off of it, stay off of it. I said, I've been walking around on it and exercising for 9 weeks, but now it's an emergency.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
So
Now we know, right?
yeah, but it is a serious injury, and I did take it seriously. Once it was diagnosed, I was immediately on crutches.
Mhm.
I did avoid surgery, though, because of the placement of the stress fracture. The orthopedic doctor that I saw agreed that if I was consistent and stayed off of it and let it heal, that I could avoid surgery. And so I did, thank goodness. I did have an extra 3 months stint of no impact activity.
Mhm.
So it actually, from start to finish, it took 9 months to get back to full activity.
That's a long time.
It was a long time. And I missed running greatly because band exercises while you're seated, not doesn't do it. I couldn't I couldn't even pool jog at the time, because of the stress fracture. They didn't want any sort of pressure on it whatsoever. Um, I couldn't spin bike. I couldn't do anything. So I was very sedentary for that whole time. And there's a mental and a physical side to that. So,
I was just gonna ask, how was your mental health during that time?
well, it depends on which family member you ask. um, It was very hard. Um, there were times where I was very down and sad, especially when I did my what was supposed to be my last MRI, and it came back with a new finding. I had edema in the femoral head,
Mhm.
which was not there previously. And so that put me off an extra 3 months. So I should have been, off and going after 6, but I had to do another 3 months of no impact activity or low impact. I could walk. I couldn't do anything beyond that though. So
That's a long time.
it was a long time, yes. But I was always determined. I had avoided surgery for a reason, and I was always determined to be back to running. And no matter who I talked to, I'm like, nope, I'm going to be back. One way or the other, I'm going to be back. So I held to that.
And the team that you had working with you, was there any, root cause or anything that you needed to do from your movement, your nutrition, your gait?
Mhm.
Or was I know I follow Lucy Charles Barkley, who I love, and she had something similar. But is this something that is preventable, or was it just a one in a million piece of bad luck for you?
You know what? No one had ever really been able to say, like, to point to one thing specifically. Because my training load was appropriate for where
Mhm.
I was. It wasn't too fast. I'm very conservative when it comes to adding load. I'm very particular about that. So my load was correct. Um, I did have a DEXA scan after the fracture, and although I was under 50, is it under 50? I can't remember, but it was under the age that they would
Mhm.
normally do a DEXA scan. But because of the stress fracture, they agreed to do that. And there was no sign of any, bone loss or anything. Everything looked very good.
Good.
Uh, Nutrition was on point. They ran all sorts of labs to check my calcium level, my D level, phosphate, everything. Everything was in good. So it was not nutrition. And what finally, we all kind of came to the conclusion of was that I had thrown my gait off for so long. It was a stress fracture. So that's
Mhm.
over time. It wasn't
Mhm.
acute.
Mhm.
So because I ignored that injury that lasted too long, I ever so slightly threw off my gait, not realizing it, and put more load in an area that simply was not meant for that amount of load. I mean, that's what it really came down to in the end. So I think the message there is do not ignore the niggles. If they last too long, you have to address them.
'Cause your body will compensate, but it won't always compensate in a way that is positive for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just that ever so slight, you know, offloading where it I'm yes.
And was it while you were recovering that you started your podcast? Or, I mean, I assume you're not a run coach full time. So how did you get to go from real estate to run coach to having a podcast? And would love for you to share a little bit about your book too.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So I've always been very multidimensional person, and I've got to have lots of things going on in order to be happy. It's just who I am. I am so by day, I am the broker of record for a very large luxury real estate firm in Southern California. And so I'm responsible for lots of people, lots of transactions, lots of real estate money. Um, and so it's a high pressure job, which is why I like to run, which is again why being, on my butt for 9 months doing that job was really difficult because I had no outlet. Uh, but I love to talk about running. I mean, I'm like loving this conversation. If I can get someone to talk to me about plant-based nutrition and running, I'm just in seventh heaven. And I don't always know a lot of people who have those interests. So I thought, well, I am going to start a podcast because I know that there are lots of people out in the world, across the world, not just in my country, but across the world, who share that interest. And so the podcast gives me an opportunity to share my thoughts and on the topics and interact with other people who can learn something and also just enjoy that conversation. And then I get it out because I get to talk all about it. So that's where the podcast came from. And I think I did start that when I was still recovering. Yeah. And one of my earlier episodes was really that whole stress fracture story, like in great detail, because I knew I wanted to share that. And that was really the impetus, I think, for the podcast initially was I I have this story in me and I know I need to share it because it can help other people. When I was injured, I couldn't find a lot of women who had been through what I was going through. The femoral neck stress fracture is, although we hear about it, it is not a common injury. It's a severe injury. You hear a lot more about foot fractures and things like that. Not so much the hip. um, and the hip is like the gateway to the rest of your body. So I wanted to share it.
And thank you for that because you made two good points. One, that part of your mission was to try and educate people and I don't want to say correct, but help provide a trusted resource for what's out on social media. Because
Mhm.
I do find that there's so much out there and no one really knows what is the best information to follow or to assimilate into their own life. So thank you for doing that. And the same with the podcast, because it's great when people see all the good things that happen, but navigating injury is part of being a runner. And the fact that you're willing to share your journey with all of us it's really important. And we benefit from, it was a negative experience for you, but there were so many pearls of wisdom that you could offer.
Mhm. And that's the point of it, right? I'm I'm not an influencer. I'm not out there just
You
trying
are.
to share all the positive and the good. I want to share the real. I'm a real wife, mother, and employee, like so many. And and this is what I do for for my love of it. So, and if I can help someone else, that's makes me so happy. I love when people reach out to me on Instagram or social media sometimes and ask me about the story or tell me I'm going through the same thing and or I was just diagnosed with a stress fracture and hearing your story has helped me so much because I know that there's hope for me on the other side and that makes me feel so good to be able to help other people like that.
And while you were recovering, was that also the time when you decided you wanted to write a book?
I've always wanted to write a book, and I I had all this information, right, from my podcasts, and I thought, there are things that I talk about on my podcast that can be put into book format, and I am a huge book lover. Many years ago, I switched over to a Kindle, and I I have hundreds of books in my Kindle. Literally, like the last I checked, it was somewhere around 700 or 800 books in my Kindle. So I've read most of them, but not all of them. A lot of them are like research books. But I love books. I love to read and I also love to write. So I thought, well, what can I share that would be helpful? So I wrote a short book. It's really meant to just kind of get the impact out there. And it's well, I always forget the name of it though, because I wrote my long title. It's shortened. It's called Meals That Move You.
Uh-huh.
10 efficient meal prep tips for plant-based runners. And so I took a lot of the information from podcasts that I've done where I talk about meal prepping for plant-based runners and put it together in a short book that's available on Amazon Kindle. And if you have unlimited, then it's free. You could just download it and read the book.
Well, now I'm going to pick your brain a little bit because nutrition is a big topic. And this is for women, whether you're plant based or not plant based. Because, and now this is, I'm asking for a friend, but really asking for me. Can you talk a little bit about? So I struggle to one, fuel during long runs. It's always been partly an issue because I never want to have the bathroom challenge, and I've had it happen and it's horrible. But would you be able to share a little bit about how you coach women in terms of fueling for their long runs, hydrating for their long runs, and what you've learned in terms of maybe tips even for me on how to reduce the risk of the GI issues that can occur from goos, gels, whatever we may try and fuel with on a long run?
Yeah, and you know what, the first advice is test. Test on shorter runs because every woman's body is different and going to be responding to the fueling differently. So that's step number 1 is to always test things out and test them on shorter runs, like when you're close to home. When I first returned back to running, I did not need gels or goos or anything, uh, but I started testing them out because that was a really good time to do it. I was newly back to running, so my body wasn't accustomed to any kind of gel or anything. So it was a good time to kind of test things out and to see how it made me feel. And so I did a taste test and stomach test, which I posted up as well. I think you have the link to that,
I will.
the vegan
Share
tummy
that.
test. Otherwise, it's on social media still. You can go and find it there. Um, but the idea is to test it out for yourself. There are some parameters. If you're going to do a long run that's going to be over an hour, then you want to take in fuel during your run. Um, but I like to front load a bit, and that sometimes helps. And if you are running like in the morning, some people have trouble eating in the morning. I personally don't. I'm like, nope, breakfast, I'm hungry. So for me, that's never been an issue. But if you can eat something before your run, something light, but quick burning. So I'm kind of weird. I love red beets. And so
Mm.
I take in beets and it has a little bit of fiber. So that's gonna kinda get things moving in the tummy, early. So if you're able to eat before your run and then have time to go to the bathroom before you go out for your run, that is the ideal setup. And training your body to do that in the morning, I think is most helpful. And that can just come over time. And it's the body, gets used to things that you train it to do. So I think consistency in your habits is really helpful. Also, drinking plenty of water first thing in the morning is always really key. I think, again, that goes back to whether you're plant based, not athletic or not, getting that hydration back in the body before you start your day after being, asleep for 8 hours ish, 7 if we're lucky. um,
Hopefully
yeah,
7 to 8.
yes. um, so, taking in that hydration first thing in the morning is so important also. And then that's going to help set you up for your run as well. So, taking that in again, all before you head out the door is so key. And then, you know, plan your routes if you have to, especially if you're going to go for really long runs. I just had that as I'm training for my next marathon. There's a route that I run for my very long runs. And instead of going to the south where there's no bathroom for, several miles, I'll just go to the north where there is a bathroom about 5 miles in. So it's very helpful to know that there's help if I need it. Yeah.
100% agree.
Mhm. Yeah, so planning your routes is good.
And do you have any recommendations in terms of how, I mean, is it 20 grams of carbs every hour or 40 grams of carbs every hour, or does it depend on your body size, your body weight?
I think that there's like general rules, and I think general rules are always a great place to start. So the general rule is somewhere between 30 and 60 grams per hour. And most gels commercially, unless you're buying like the super duper gels, most of your average gels are going to be about 25 grams um, of carbs in it. So you can calculate that, roughly for your run. So if you're going to be out for an hour, um, It's now you don't wait the hour. This is where a
Right.
common misunderstanding, and I don't you might not know that already, but in case there are listeners that listening
Please
who aren't
do.
aware,
Mhm.
when we talk about, every hour, it doesn't mean you wait the whole hour and then take the gel. You wanna take it before you need it. So maybe at the 20-minute mark or the 30-minute mark, then you take your gel, and then you finish up your next half hour. So you have, 1 gel or something, during that time period. So, again, testing it out is so important. I start with a little bit less and then build up. So for myself as an example, it kinda depends on my overall load too for the week, and this is what I also talk to my athletes about, is let's start a little lower and see how you feel and test it out. How's your tummy? How's your energy? Do you need more hydration? And bump up from there. I think it's better to go up than it is to, be way, way high and overdo it, because I think that's when the tummy issues come in, especially if you're doing gels and an electrolyte in your water bottle. Electrolytes also can kind of cause a little bit of an imbalance or tummy issues, and I think that's something a lot of runners forget about. They just think, "Oh, I need electrolytes," but not realizing that that can also, upset the tummy GI issue, GI lining. Um, so for my shorter runs, I might do, um, like 1 gel every 30 minutes,
Okay.
and, that's sufficient for maybe, like, my lower volume training. But then when I get up into the bigger mileage, like I'm doing the 15-mile long run, 18, etcetera, then I'll bump it up and do 1 every 20 minutes or so. Yeah. So not considerably, but just a little bit. Yeah.
And I will definitely link in your resource guide on, some of the fuels that you've tested, because it's always nice to know what someone else has tried and not there's so many out there now that
Mhm.
you could spend a lot of money on things that maybe aren't aligned with your goals or don't meet the requirements that you have for your own fueling needs.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so many, and as personal preference, I like to find gels that are closest to nature as possible.
Mhm, mhm.
That's my personal preference. I've used the other ones, and they I don't know if I just have an iron stomach or something, but they don't typically bother my stomach. I really only found one, ever that really, like, it didn't sit well with me. And, I tried it several times just to make sure it wasn't a fluke, and it just never really did. But I know lots of other runners who swear by it. So it just depends. That's why you have to test things.
Do you? Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's why there's so many, but you're right, they do get expensive, especially when you start bumping it up and doing the every 20 minutes. Like, I just did my 20-mile long run last weekend,
Uh-huh.
and I took in 9 gels during that
Oh, yeah,
run.
that's a lot.
And yeah, that is a it was a lot, and that gets expensive.
It does.
Mm,
But I mean, I agree with you. So one of my favorite is Mirror,
mhm.
which is really
Yeah.
just whole foods. Uh,
Mhm. Yeah, Mir is delicious, actually.
too good.
Yeah. They're I
They're
find
like
them a
dessert.
little Yeah, I find them a little thick for me,
Uh-huh.
so I prefer those more for hiking, but I do love them, or in between workouts. That's how I use the mirror is, like, if I'm doing a run and then a strength train afterward,
Uh-huh.
and I need a little boost, I'll oftentimes take in, like, the cacao almond
That's
one
my
or
favorite.
something. Yeah, and it's nice and thick, and it just gives me a boost, and then I can go into my strength training with that.
And Valerie, do you, with your athletes, sometimes I find that women become afraid of carbs or they've heard on social media after a certain age, we need to carb restrict or carbs are what are preventing me from meeting my body composition goals.
Mm,
How do you coach your athletes when it comes to the fact that your muscles need carbohydrates to fuel your runs? Your brain needs carbohydrates, glucose in order to have a happy, healthy brain. But there's this challenge between, how we look and how we feel with what we know intellectually we need to do in order to meet our fitness goals.
Yeah, and it is a challenge, especially as we age. Our These macronutrients work differently in our bodies. They just do. Uh, so the first thing that I say is that you have to make a decision about what is your priority right now first. So with marathon training, for example, the priority is fueling,
Mhm,
avoiding injury, feeling good. You're putting a lot of pressure on your body, skeletal system, your energy system, everything. And so restricting the energy source that the body primarily uses in endurance activities is detrimental. It can lead to injury.
mhm,
So is your priority to look a certain way, or is it to accomplish a physical goal that is very challenging? It's a big, challenging physical goal. And I think once you have your priorities, then okay, I might not, be as trim and slim as I am when I'm not marathon training,
mhm,
because I am taking all these extra carbs and there's water retention, inflammation, things like that, that's going to affect the body composition. But it's a finite period of time. You're not going to be marathon training forever. It's a matter of a few months, and then return to what you're doing. I like to liken it to people that are doing the fitness shows, like who are
mhm,
professionals and they're in these fitness shows. They do not look like that all year round. And there is a time and a place. And so you have a goal, you eat and nutrition or fuel for your goal. And then after that, you go on to a new goal. Maybe your new goal after the marathon is to go back and have that trim body. Well, now you can cut carbs down a little bit because your body doesn't need the same amount as it did when you were marathon training. So having a priority and understanding what that is, I think, is key. You really can't have both, um, and avoid the detrimental effects.
And I love that you start with what's your why, what's your priority, and then all of the rest of the pillars fall under that. Your
Mhm.
how you feel your body, how you move your body, prioritizing your sleep, your stress.
Mhm.
But if you have that goal, then you can determine the path forward during that time.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah. I've had runners also who say that um, they love to do strength training. They love
mhm,
to be in the gym 3 days
mhm,
a week lifting all these heavy weights, but they also want to run a half marathon. It's like, well, we've got to, decide because you can't do both based on their schedule. They're working women, so they've got, other priorities beyond just working out. And there just isn't enough time in a day. Not to mention, it's very fatiguing when you're lifting that heavy for a long period of time and then trying to go out and do these longer and longer runs. So that's the same message for that too, is that okay, do you want to run the half marathon or do you want to continue to, lift all of these, lift weights all these days of the week?
mhm, mhm.
And so the outcome in this one particular conversation I have in mind was that she cut back her lifting while she was training just for a couple of days. She still lifted, but instead of lifting for an hour that day, she lifted for a half hour.
Mhm.
And she did 2 times a week instead of 3. And then that left room for her runs without feeling the fatigue and overtired and sore muscles and all that. But
She could
it's just a finite period of time. Yeah.
And so that's a great segue into going back to your book again, that you need to prepare.
Mhm,
So, are you someone, as part of that coaching, you're, again, you have a busy job, a high stress job, and you mentioned meal prep and actually being able to prepare, or at least sitting down on a Saturday and planning, what am I going to have for the next 3 days if it's not
mhm,
the next 7 days? Are
mhm,
there some tips from your book that you can share with our community today? Because I think meal prep's important.
mhm,
One, it removes the mental fatigue of, at the end of the day, needing to make a healthy decision, I've just found in my own life that if I if I've already done a lot of the prep, and it's not that I have every meal fixed, but I've got my starch, I've got my protein, I've got my grains, then I can mix and match what I'm going to eat during the course of the week. But when I failed to prep, I tend to make less healthy decisions.
Don't we all? Yes, don't we all? Um, I have a couple of go-to meals for those in-between times where I didn't have time to meal prep or I was too tired because I just ran 20 miles, those kind of days. Um, I have my quick and dirty, like always keep frozen vegetables in your
Yeah.
freezer.
Mhm.
That's key number one, because you can always throw tofu with it or something. So those are really good just to have on hand. But as far as the meal prep, yes. And I prep the same way you do. I like to prep ingredients.
Mhm.
And I think that's a personal preference for some people. Some people like they want the whole meal and they want 7 days and it's all prepped out to go. And good on you. I've tried that. It didn't work for me.
Mhm.
So I find it's more efficient to prep ingredients and then have it structured in my mind or written out of how those ingredients are going to go together. And what I also like about having ingredients prepped is that if you are being mindful of your macronutrient counts, your carbohydrates, your protein, and your fat, and those ratios, if you have a meal already prepped, your macronutrients are what they are. But if
Mhm.
you have a bowl of rice in the fridge and you've got a bowl of veggies and then you've got maybe some tofu that you're going to, be able to just prepare real quick, um, you can do a half a cup of rice or you can do a whole cup of rice, depending on what you need that day. It's not all done for you. And so it's a little easier to maintain an overall nutritional balance in that case without, being stuck and rigid. I like flexibility. Um, and instant pot, if you don't have an instant pot, does
Oh, yeah.
anybody on your podcast not have an instant pot? That would be like crazy to me.
Well, and for years I was afraid of my Instapot
Oh.
because, and I hear that sometimes, oh, there's the pressure but once you use it, you'll never go
Mm-mm.
back. Yeah.
No. Mm-mm. And I used to make, when my son was little, I used to make baby food for him in um in an actual pressure cooker, like on the stove.
A real
So
pressure cooker. Yeah.
yeah, so when I got the Instant Pot, I was like, "Oh, hallelujah. This is great." Because I knew what I was coming from. Yeah,
It
the Instant Pot is great, but to prep beans, I love it. I mean, that's like if there's no other reason to buy an Instant Pot, that is it. The
agree.
beans. I mean, yes, you can just open a can of beans, but to have them fresh is so much better. So,
And they're inexpensive that way.
yes, much less expensive. Yeah. I cook everything in the Instant Pot. I do sweet potatoes in the Instant Pot, regular potatoes, my beets that I love because I eat beets before every run. So I just toss the beets into the Instant Pot with the little trivet and steam them in there. I think depending on the size, you pressure cook them for, I don't know, I get some big beets, so like 10 to 20 minutes sometimes. And and I chop them up and again toss them in the fridge and then I just dish out what I need each morning.
That's so much fun. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was just going to ask, are you, looking at nutrition holistically, and also knowing that, especially for those of us that are plant-based, a question we frequently get is, where do you get your protein from? Do you encourage your female athletes to use protein supplements, or do you mainly focus on whole food sources to meet all your macros? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm flexible. I think it depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and what your body needs. So, um, I typically don't have any problem based on my overall caloric needs. I don't have any problem getting about 100 grams of protein without supplementing.
Mhm.
So that is pretty normal for me and pretty easy. But, it's the caloric needs also that you have to look at. So there's like the balancing act. So when I'm you know, in a training program and I'm training hard like right now, I will supplement with as clean a protein powder as I can find without a lot of additives and things like that. And I've got a couple brands now that are my go-to, but I'm not afraid to supplement if needed. Uh, it's it's like it is a supplement. I think that's the key that I think a lot of
Mhm.
people miss is that it's not meant to be a replacement for the good food. It is literally to supplement when you don't need a lot of the other macronutrients. I don't need a lot of fat. I'm good on that. I don't need any more carbs. I'm good there. I just need a little bit more protein to reach my balance. And so I'm supplementing. And I think that's the key. And that's how I think it's important to look at it.
And I love that because,
Mhm.
yes, it's not, we do have meal replacements, but
Mhm.
getting your macros from your whole foods, that should be the primary focus, and it's doable.
Mhm. Yeah, and I have a powder that I like, and I like to put it in my tea because it tastes it's I use a chicory root tea, so it's like a
Uh-huh.
coffee, and the protein powder adds a little bit of protein, a little satiety, in the evening, without getting the caffeine, and a little protein before bed is always a nice thing to do. Um, and so I enjoy my tea with my protein. Makes it creamy. It's great.
It's funny because quite a few of my clients do protein tea also, so
Mhm. Mhm.
it works and it is tasty.
Mhm.
Valerie, before we wind up, going again back to, you mentioned P90X2. Um, have you changed or have you in any way altered your resistance training approach after your stress fracture, but also thinking about the fact that, women of a certain age, we're hearing so much now about, and this could be a whole podcast, so you can answer as short or as long as you want, in terms of less zone two, more resistance training. I think that there's a balance personally,
Mhm. Mhm.
but have you changed your resistance training strategy knowing that bone quality and strength, and they're two separate variables, are
Mhm.
important for us, and knowing that as our estrogen changes too, there's a lot of other things that we're encountering in life to stay healthy from a musculoskeletal perspective.
Yeah, and it has changed, but I wouldn't say dramatically, but I'm
Mhm.
more intentional. And I do bring that to my athletes as well and to my coaching is to make things more intentional. So, for example, instead of just a quick muscular warm up, I include some tendon work. And
Mhm.
I think the tendons are the one thing that people think a lot about bones, but they forget about the tendons that are pulling on those bones. And
100%.
so I've definitely become more intentional with that single leg work and the single leg tendon work. So, that hamstring issue that I talked about, it turns out that that was a proximal hamstring tendinopathy.
Uh-huh.
And so that is a pretty ongoing issue. It can flare up and come back. And so that takes consistency over time. Also, working on the stabilizer muscles is so important. And so that again is I'm more intentional about the stabilizers, not just, the big muscles, but the glute med, those little stabilizers and ankle and footwork. So I have a Mobo board. I don't know if you've ever spoken with Jay DeSherry or not, but he his book on running rewired, and then he's updated it recently to include the Mobo as well. It's a little board that trains your foot, but the first time you get on that little board, it's not like your old classic like balance board or anything. It You can feel it all the way up into your hip when you
Oh,
stand
wow.
on this board and you start doing the exercises.
Okay.
So, highly recommend a mobile board for every runner. Anyone I talk to, I say you need a mobile board um, because it trains foot proprioception as well as ankle, knee, hip. So that is one of those things that I have been doing even before I was injured, but I've incorporated it back because of all of the stabilizer work that it helps you do. And then, of course, bios.
Plyos, yes.
Yes.
So though, I mean, you just actually hit the nail on the head that the plyometrics are important, making sure that we're not just focusing on the big muscles, the little muscles need their tender loving care too. And then tendons connect to muscles, connect to bone. So don't forget there's a whole chain that we need to be focused on, not just the bone and not just the muscle, but if your tendons are weak or injured, that has consequences also.
hmm And it's possible, it sounds like a lot. I think to some people that can sound really overwhelming, like, oh my God, how do I fit this all in? But you have to remember that the exercises that you're doing, oftentimes, if you have enough load with them, are going to hit all of it at the same time. So it's not like you have to do one exercise for your tendon and one for the muscle. Now you can do a single leg deadlift with some weight and you're going to hit it all. You're going to get the balance. Well, you're not going to get the plyo in that case, but you're going to hit the balance and the strength and the stretch. So,
And you've got a little core right in there too.
yes, you do. Yes, you do. Anything on a single leg.
So, Valerie, to wrap up our conversation today, I have a couple of just lightning round questions I'd love for you to give an answer to, just so we can learn a little bit more about you.
Great.
What is your top meal prep tip?
Batch cook. Like we were talking about. Yes.
Get
Batch
an
cook.
Instant Pot.
And the Instant Pot. Yes.
What's your favorite post-run meal?
Like I said, I run in the morning, so breakfast is my post-run meal usually. So I'll do either oat bran or tofu, like a tofu scramble.
And this one's tough. And if you need to break it up into your everyday, your race, but what's your go-to running shoe?
Um, well, I'm a big Saucony fan. So for me, if I was just going to reach for a pair of shoes, it'd be my Speed 3s. So Saucony Speed 3. Those are my favorites.
And do you have a pre-race hype song?
It's not so much a pre-race, it's more during the race. Pre-race, I've got like all the anxiety jitters and stuff. I usually don't need music at that point. But during the race, it's funny. My son is a musician and he plays in a rock band. And it seems like whenever I need it the most, or I'm coming across a finish, or I'm hitting a really hard spot, his music comes on in my
Oh,
playlist. And that hypes me up and gets me, over that hump. Yeah, their band name is Duende, and they've only got a couple of original songs, but they seem to come up in my playlist exactly when I need
just what
them.
we need. That's nice. And how about, so I run a lot with the Nike Run app. Um, and so frequently I have a mantra on tough miles. Do you have a mantra that you say to yourself on those miles when you just need that extra impetus?
I say I'm grateful because for me, it's more the memory of sitting for those 9 months.
Mhm.
That's really what keeps me going these days in the hard miles, is that memory of where I came from and that I'm able to do what I'm doing now. So I just say I'm grateful.
And we all should be grateful to be able to do what we do.
Mhm.
Last question. Is there one book, since you have so many books on your Kindle, that every plant-based runner should read?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. That one that was really instrumental though when I went plant-based, I mentioned briefly about, cheese being so difficult.
Uh-huh.
And that's so common for a lot of individuals who are going plant-based or thinking about it is, and we probably heard it, right? Where they say, oh, I could never do that, or I could do that except for cheese. I can't
Geez.
give up cheese. And there's a reason for that. So my go-to book is called The Cheese Trap by
That,
Dr. Barnard.
yeah.
Yes. So I highly recommend that book to anybody that has that comment.
The funny thing though is now that I haven't had cheese, I don't miss it. So it really is getting over the hump.
It is, yeah, and now there are plant-based alternatives that if you want something, if you want something with cheese on it, you can do that. I don't recommend that on the regular basis, just because it's, like we talked about, it's so much better to get your nutrition from the whole foods primarily, but I don't see anything wrong with an occasional treat.
No, I can't.
And there are some good brands.
Much better than there were years ago, for sure.
Yes.
Valerie, is there, and we touched on a lot, and I really want to thank you for spending this time with me and the Thrive on Plants community today. Is there anything we didn't discuss that you wanted to share with the top community?
Um, well, I do have another book coming out here pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
I do. So I'm in the layout stage. So
Mhm.
it'll be soon. But yeah, so it's going to be for first time marathoners who are over 40.
In your
So
spare time?
yeah. So if that is of interest to you, I do have a book coming out on the topic.
Well, if you're interested, would love to have you back when around the time of the book release, because I know there's a lot of women in this community who run, and I know both Valerie and I have used the word athlete. If you move your body, you're an athlete.
Mhm.
So regardless of what you may think in your head, you are an athlete, and we want you to take pride in what you do and how you move, and that's the whole purpose of these conversations.
Very well said.
So we will have to have you back when you're getting ready to release the new book, and
Thank
so that you can give our community some tips on preparing for that marathon.
I'd love it. Thank you so much.
Valerie, thank you. I've been delighted to meet you. I follow you on social media and would encourage others to do so too. And so appreciate the time that you spent with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a good time chatting. And if anybody wants to reach out, I love to have conversations with other plant based runners.
What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Probably Instagram. So I'm at running.on.carbs, running on carbs.
And we will put it all in the show notes. And I would encourage you to follow Valerie. Her link tree has some great links, but we'll put them in with the show notes, and we'll be sure to let everyone know when your new book is available.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Valerie. I love these conversations when I just have fun and we just talk about all the things that are important. But I wanted to recap a couple of key takeaways from my conversation today with Coach Valerie Swanson. So, lesson one is start where you are and stack small wins. Valerie didn't tackle 13.1 miles until age 40. And what this proves is that progression and persistence beats perfection every time. Takeaway number two, carbs are not the enemy, but underfueling is. Her rule of thumb around how to target carbs per hour and how to tummy test gels or goos or whatever your fueling strategy may be. This is how you keep the energy high and how you keep the GI drama low. Takeaway three is listen to your body. Coach Val shared how she had persistent niggle that she didn't listen to until it became more than a persistent niggle. And sometimes it's easy for us to try and push away the niggles, thinking we can train through them or that they'll go away. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. If you have pain or discomfort that persists, please take time and have it evaluated. And then finally, your why drives the how. Whether it's lowering your cholesterol, training for a marathon, or juggling a high stakes career, your strategy will help you keep your priorities crystal clear. Be sure to follow Valerie on YouTube, on Instagram. She's at Running on Carbs. And also check out her Meals That Move You guide for some powerful plant fueled performance tips. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a quick review, like it, and then share it with a friend or someone who may be interested in learning more about their running journey. Because as we shared in the episode, we are all athletes. And no matter what stage you are in your running journey, you can learn something by listening to people like Coach Val. So thank you for joining me for today's episode on Thrive on Plants. Until next time, stay strong, keep thriving on plants, and living with purpose. Be well. The information shared on the Thrive on Plants podcast is intended solely for educational and informational purposes. It is not medical advice, and it should never be used as a substitute for personalized guidance from a qualified healthcare professional. Always consult with your physician or healthcare provider before making any changes to your nutrition, exercise routine, supplement use, or your overall wellness plan. The opinions and advice shared by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Vegan Gym or its team. While we aim to bring you high-quality, thoughtful conversations, these perspectives are not intended to replace professional medical care. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, you have the power to thrive on plants and live with purpose.